and bless your name forever and ever. My mouth will speak the praise of the Lord, and all flesh will bless his holy name forever and ever. Psalm 145 begins and ends in affirmations of praise. Although in our English translation we are not aware of it, the psalm is also an acrostic, meaning that each verse of the psalm begins with a successive letter of the Hebrew alphabet. It is a work of poetic art, the creation of a skilled literary artist. But scholars suggest that acrostics were also used because they were effective memory devices to aid both individuals and the gathered community in learning and remembering and reciting a prayer or psalm. And this psalm was meant to be taken to heart and recited. Early rabbinic instructions tell us 3 times each day. Author Adele Berlin, writing about this psalm, commented, "The poet praises God with everything from A to Z." Psalm 145, of which we read a portion, sings praise for God's greatness, for God's goodness, for God's grace and glory, all God's works, all that God has created, the psalmists tell us, will give thanks, and all of God's faithful ones are called to blessing and gratitude. The psalm affirms that God is king, and God's people are called from generation to generation to give praise, to tell of God's deeds and the splendor of God's kingdom. I think of the words of the prayer Jesus taught his disciples, "Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven." The picture that is painted in the psalm is rich in imagery. One can imagine why this psalm was recited over and over, day by day, and passed from one generation to another, that it became a cherished praise of the divine for not only Jewish but also Christian believers. For it affirms that in the midst of whatever life may throw in our path, the psalm calls us back to a center point, an anchor for faithful living. It reminds us when we need reminding, and believe me, there are many times when we need to be reminded that God is near, that God indeed hears our prayers and our cries, that the God that we know in Jesus Christ meets us with open hands, offers us a gift, and calls us into a relationship of life, of living as a people of God, claimed and protected, whether by bubble wrap. Sometimes it seems the bubble wrap's missing, and we get buffeted around and bruised up a bit. But the psalm calls us back to remember who we are and whose we are at the heart of our life. I came across a story I wanted to share with you. It tells about the editorial staff of a Sunday magazine that at one time created a Faith in Life award as a way perhaps of increasing its readership, but at the same time recognizing those who best demonstrated their faith in daily living. Readers were encouraged to submit letters of nomination to the paper, telling stories of those persons who they believed best lived their faith each day. A large number of the nominating letters that came in mentioned people who either had attended church regularly for years or had given a sizable amount of money to their church or a favorite charity, or in many cases who had done both. Many of the letters also included newspaper clippings that showed the outstanding dedication and work of the person who was being nominated for the award. Therefore, many were surprised when the winner was announced. His letter of nomination had no newspaper clippings enclosed. It wasn't even typed. In fact, it had arrived written in crayon. It read, "Anthony is a plumber. He helped some people fix up a house for my friend's family because their first house burned down. He also visits my grandmother in the nursing home and makes her happy with his stories and by playing his harmonica. He is a lot like Jesus. I hope he wins. But if he doesn't, it won't matter. He will still be the same good old Anthony." And it was signed, "Love, Anne." He is a lot like Jesus. What a wonderful compliment. Living our praise by the ways we live our lives, that is what these scriptures call us to reflect on and think about. Giving thanks not only in prayers and words, but in actions and deeds. Tomorrow, as David Gessert reminded us, is Veterans Day. And across the country and around the world, there will be services of remembrance, quiet moments of reflection, wreath-laying ceremonies and spoken tributes, gratitude for actions and sacrifices. And if we are true to the deepest meanings of the day, commitments to care for those who carry the visible and invisible scars of war, and a renewed commitment to build a future of hope, to build a just and peaceful world. Here in this congregation, we have built a wonderful relationship with chaplains who support and provide spiritual care for those currently serving in both forward combat arenas and for those whose injuries have brought them home to be cared for in military hospitals and veterans hospital settings, and for those who live with the unimaginable stress of all that they have seen and done, and for their families. Our coffee mission through Holy Joe's provides a resource for this ministry, and I encourage you to be generous in your giving to support its work. In preparing for this morning's services, I came across a sermon that used as a focal point a vital question: how much is one man's life worth? It focuses on how we live the life that has been given to us. The sermon used as its jumping-off point the film story Saving Private Ryan. I think my husband was convinced I had abandoned all my pacifist credentials last evening when I downloaded the movie and was watching it as I was doing final sermon preparation. I had seen the movie many years ago, but watching it again last night reminded me of the essential frame of the story. The film begins and ends with scenes in a cemetery in France.